everything of value in this world will be tokenized. Too many advantages to it. Everything of value will be tokenized, which means we will be able to have very fast, low friction interactions on chain for everything in the world. And this will...
We've met with nearly every asset manager, every major bank, every wealth fund you can think of. They all want to enter this space, but what they...
All right, so in this portion of today's video breakdown, I want to touch on the total cryptocurrency market cap. I want to take a look at a bunch of different crypto assets, XRP, Canton, Metal, XPR, take a look at some dark pools and deltas. And then I want to touch on just some huge things that were said at the Hedera conference that took place just yesterday. Shout out to Osmar for sharing this in the chat. I found 2 video clips that were excessively bullish, one in which goes hand in hand with what this senator just recently said via a video that Solana just posted at the Accelerate Solana conference. So we'll get into that, and then we'll roll over into some announcements from Canton Network. I want to go over this one from Cresius Official. They just announced this. It doesn't seem like anybody really covered this in thorough detail. So I want to break that down for you guys, and then we'll roll over into the announcement via the DTCC in regards to their tokenization project that they announced yesterday, and we'll get into the nitty-gritty of that, talk about Canton, talk about XRP, and then we'll end the call there. So first, starting off with this post here, where I said to you guys, if the total crypto market cap pops back above $2.62 trillion, there will likely be a sell squeeze and many shorts will get liquidated. 2.89 to $3 trillion are the next hurdles before we get super excited. If 2.6 trillion cannot hold and some major catalyst drops prices again, 2.3 trillion cannot be ignored. No specific timeline for this, but watch these levels closely. And I said this to you all on May 3rd, 2026. Of course, if you've been in this community, we've been paying attention to these dark pools for literally months now. So now fast forward, yesterday, what did we see announced across the board? Crypto market sees 2.68 or $268 million in liquidations. Short suffered $300 million flush as Bitcoin hits 81,000. $116 million were liquidated from crypto. So, you know, again, we've been tracking these levels accurately in this community, level to level, no hopium, no hype here. I mentioned to you all that if we break above the $2.62 trillion threshold, we're likely going to start to see a sell squeeze, and we're likely going to start to see short positions liquidated. So that is what's currently taking place at time of recording. This is the 12-hour time frame. What I was realizing is that there were some sellers passively defending 2.62 trillion. You can see that defense here, 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 and here. And the thesis behind my post was that if we can see buyers break above these highs, all of their stop losses and sell orders are likely going to translate into more buy volume and take prices to some extent higher, resulting in a sell squeeze or massive short liquidations. Now, right now, it doesn't look like there's any major resistance until roughly around 2.75 trillion. So if the optimism continues throughout Asia and London session or throughout the remainder of the week, be prepared for a possible retest of 2.62 trillion or a retest of any of these EMAs, as we are operating in now this new bullish A to B leg. So as long as price remains above 2.48 trillion as of time of recording, we are still in a bullish environment in the total crypto market. So a bullish continuation could look something like this: a retest of that base to take price higher, a medium retest back into 2.6 trillion to take prices higher, or consolidation and a bullish breakout, continuing to take stop losses and short positions, as there is no real resistance up until about, like I said, 2.75 trillion. Above that area, 2.89 trillion still remains the next hurdle that we need to see buyers overcome before we get too excited, right? At any point in time, we have to understand that sellers sitting at these highs could defend at these prices and push prices lower, especially if sentiment sours. So we need to be very, very mindful of the fundamental backdrop in the coming days ahead as we're starting to inch up into premium prices. Hopefully, we don't see anything excessive materialize and the sentiment can continue and the bottom is in and we go to Valhalla from here, right? That's the rainbow scenario. So total crypto market cap to the upside, 2.89 trillion remains the most immediate threshold. $2.6 trillion would be preferable to hold above in the form of buyers passively defending this area. But Anything above 2.45 trillion still remains the bullish thesis intact. To the downside, the only thing that would invalidate the current bullish environment is if we see sentiment shift. We break, that's a little bit excessive. We break 2.45 trillion, and then we start to make bearish price action to some extent beneath 2.45 trillion. That would invalidate the current bullish thesis. So be watching for that closely. So massive confirmation, building a new infrastructure layer. This was at the HederaCon the other day. This is Dr. Lehman Beard, the co-founder of Hedera, and Mance Harmon, the other co-founder of Hedera. Listen to what they say here about how they're building out the infrastructure layer. They talk about agentic AI. They talk about how everything is about to come on chain in the next consecutive couple of months / years.
And that's exciting to me. How's that going to change our world in 5 years? That's very difficult to know. I don't think I could have predicted in 2017 where we would be here in 2026, right? Demon?
In our last 2 seconds, where are we going to be? Ultimately, everything of value in this world will be tokenized. Too many advantages to it. Everything of value will be tokenized, which means we will be able to have very fast, low friction interactions on chain for everything in the world. And this will enable whole new use cases to all the people in the world using the system and the AI agents. And I'll just leave it there.
We didn't talk about AI.
Yeah, I know. We are out of time, but
we're out of time.
You want to talk about AI? No, we can keep going. Sarah is here. She just told me we can keep going. Keep going.
But 5 years from now, clearly, I think that the world is going to be full of AI agents, and those agents are going to be making payments. And so agentic payment solutions will be here. That's really exciting. We've talked a lot about what's going to be required to achieve that. I think there will be a new layer of infrastructure that makes it possible to scale agentic payment solutions within the enterprise. In particular, the systems that exist today, payments-related infrastructure today, scales linearly with the number of people that are in the enterprise. And the number of agents that are going to be used for payments is going to dwarf that. It's going to grow exponentially, which requires new infrastructure to make it possible to scale at that level. And that's huge, right? That's going to be enabled by the Web3 technologies that we're using here.
Hedera in particular.
Hedera. Hashgraph.
There we go.
Hashgraph.
There we go.
Right. Hedera in particular. And what he's talking about is this whole entire nomenclature that a lot of people are going to come to crypto, and each of them are likely going to have a couple of different agents. Myself, Aqua, all of you guys in the future will probably have 2 to 5 agents managing our money and our funds for us. And if there's 2 billion people in crypto and 2 billion people in crypto have 2 to 5 AI agents, again, that alone is going to, like he said, dwarf the human population operating in the Web3 ecosystem. And that is all going to require a new infrastructure layer. And so that was just interesting to hear at the kickoff of the HederaCon that they're aligned with the AI agent, revolution that's taking shape. I want to come over here to this gentleman who said something also very interesting and very bullish in regards to the Clarity Act and how that is the last bit of clarity, no pun intended, that the institutions need to really feel comfortable to flood in at scale. So this is not just some random dude. Right now, he is the current senior managing director of policy and government relations at Kraken. And prior to that, he was the associate director of legislative affairs at the White House. And he also was at the U.S. House of Representatives. So this is him right here, Nate Parker. And let's bend our ear and listen to what he has to say.
From our members is, and we had this meeting a few weeks ago, like, how should I think about policy? How should I think about, regulation? So if you can give us some insight on how DC is thinking about that.
Yep. We've met with nearly every asset manager, every major bank, every wealth fund you can think of. They all want to enter this space, but what they need is that green light, which is this market structure framework that's coming out of DC. To meet that demand at Kraken, we've launched Kraken Embed, which is a crypto as a service product offering, which allows banks and other fintechs to plug directly into our infrastructure without having to build that infrastructure themselves so they can offer crypto services to their clients. Given all that, we do believe this market structure framework could be the single biggest market catalyst this industry has ever seen, and the beneficiaries of that could span the entire ecosystem from Hedera to Kraken to small startups here in the audience and beyond. Predominantly, what I think business decision makers should be focused on.
Right. So that to me was huge. He didn't just say like a couple of financial institutions. He said every bank, every asset manager, every freaking everything. He said, we talked to, if you can imagine it, we've talked to them. Right. That's huge. And he said the last thing that they need is this Clarity Act. He said that's going to be the single biggest catalyst that this industry has ever seen. Imagine being bearish on crypto before that happens. Oh my God. I cannot imagine what this ecosystem is going to look like. And I'm not about to be the type of person who has spent 10 years in this space to say, after 10 years, I got scared before the institutions came in. Because after they come in, after all this money that these people are talking about comes in, this space is never, ever going to look the same ever again. And I think that the futures markets and gold and the real estate markets all hitting new all-time highs are telling us something. Because when we see profit taking from these traditional asset classes, at the same time that these institutions have regulatory clarity on crypto, where's all that profit going to go, y'all? It's going to go to freaking crypto. It's going to go to crypto. Watch. It's going to be insane when it really happens. We're going to see numbers that this space has never seen before. So that was interesting. That aligned with what this gentleman here said. I believe he is a congressman. Excuse me, I don't know. Excuse me. He is a senator from Ohio, Republican U.S. senator from Ohio. Listen to what he says. He talks about the Clarity Act as well.
But ultimately, because of President Trump, we're making a lot of progress. We passed the Genius Act. Next week, we're going to mark up the Clarity Act in the Senate, which is a big deal. Can we get an amen for that one? And we have to merge it with, not to give you all the inside baseball, but there's a bunch of committees that have jurisdiction. So we have to put it all into a tidy package. But we'll get it on the president's desk before the end of June, and it'll sign into law before July 4th. But ultimately, because
so again, those are some interesting dates. Now, do they come into fruition? Do they not come into fruition? Who knows? But myself, Aqua, some other very interesting, like-minded people on the internet with valid credentials have been saying that this summer could be explosive if we see this act sign into fruition. And he just said July 4th, they want to have it on the president's desk for signing. So pay attention to detail. July 4th, Canton yesterday announced this. And interestingly enough, they announced this at the same time they announced the DTCC thing. So I feel like this didn't get a lot of attention. I want to bring it to y'all's attention. The gap in institutional blockchain adoption is not the technology, it's the execution. Cresius Official joins Canton to help enterprise design, build, and deploy blockchain applications into production from first integration to full-scale launch. And so reading thoroughly through some of the highlights in this, it says Cresius is a blockchain infrastructure company and implementation partner for the Canton Network. And today they announced, this is yesterday, a collaboration to help enterprises and organizations across industries design, build, and deploy blockchain applications in production, guiding them through every stage of the journey from first integration to full-scale launch. The collaboration is designed to address one of the most persistent challenges in institutional blockchain adoption: execution. While many financial institutions have explored blockchain through pilots and proof of concepts, fewer have successfully transitioned to live production-grade systems. By combining Canton's institutional-grade blockchain infrastructure with Cresius delivers capabilities, the collaboration provides a clear path from strategy to deployment. Canton and Cresius are already collaborating on several projects with additional developments expected in the coming months ahead. So there's again another little tiny highlighted gem that more developments are expected to be announced in the coming months ahead, right? Cresius is currently working with leading global financial institutions to bring next generation blockchains applications into production on Canton, including its partnership with Hanwha Investments, which is a huge conglomerate, and securities to support the development of tokenization digital asset platforms focused on private market assets. So I thought that that was very interesting to say the least, right? Another announcement that came out just yesterday that didn't really get a lot of attention because that came out at the same time that Yuval Ruse posted this. Finding enough use cases that can drive natural activity on chain is the holy grail for any network without relying on speculation. And that's why this project is so important. Very excited to see it go live on Canton Network later this year. They were directly mentioned in this document from the DTCC. So I want to break this down. It looks like Canton Network is the only network for now that this is going to go live on, and that ONDO Finance and Ripple Prime, not XRPL, are going to be involved in this, according to the announcement. So DTCC plans to facilitate the initial limited production trades of real-world asset tokenizing USDCs, let me reread that. Real-world asset tokenized using DTC's tokenization service from July 2026 and plans to launch the service in October 2026. Now, what I find interesting about this is remember what the senator just said from Ohio about July 4th. This kicks off in July 2026 and goes until October 2026. So are they connected? Is there some alignment there? Who knows? Time will tell. Reading into this report in detail. So it says, the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation, the DTCC, the premier post-trade market infrastructure for the global financial services industry, today announced progress and timelines on the delivery of the Depository Trust Company's DTC's tokenization service, which is being designed with feedback and collaboration from more than 50 financial industry firms. The firms part of the DTCC industry working group represent a broad cross-section of TradFi and DeFi ecosystems, including custodians, asset managers, brokers, trading venues, applications and back-office service providers, and more. Firms participating in the DTCC industry working group include, and then it comes down here and it says Canton Network, ONDO Finance, and Ripple Prime. Now, this does not say XRPL. This says Ripple Prime. So you have to understand what Ripple Prime is, and then understanding that they said Canton Network, and Yuval Ruse said that this is set to go live on Canton Network later this year. This is not set to go live on the XRPL later this year. Ripple Prime was announced in this ongoing tokenization effort. Now, again, that speculation is up for debate. I'm not here to give my personal opinion on what's taking shape. I'm just here to show you guys what they announced. They didn't announce the XRPL. They announced Ripple Prime, which are two different things, right? Completely two separate things. It says here, this is given the dates, July 26th is when this is officially set to go launch. I personally don't think that there's any competition between XRP and Canton, and we'll get into that in just 1 second. And I think that anybody debating on whether XRP or Canton is going to be used one or the other doesn't actually understand Canton versus XRP. So this piece from Yahoo does a great job at breaking the difference down and showing how they both will have material use case in the future financial system. Starting off here, it says the Canton Network, launched in 2023 by enterprise blockchain firm Digital Asset, is not a consumer-facing payment rail. It's a network of networks designed specifically for regulated financial institutions looking to leverage blockchain while requiring absolute privacy. Its primary engine is the DAML smart contract language, which allows financial institutions to synchronize data across disparate private blockchains without exposing sensitive trade details to the public. Canton's core utility is the tokenization of real-world assets. In pilots involving major players like Goldman Sachs and BNY Mellon, Canton demonstrates the ability to execute atomic settlement, swapping tokenized U.S. treasuries for cash equivalents simultaneously. This eliminates settlement risk and manages collateral mobility with a precision that legacy systems cannot match. That matters because institutions cannot operate on fully transparent public ledgers. Canton acts as a global synchronizer for these records. Unlike XRP, it does not predominantly seek to be a universal bridge currency. It seeks to be the verified vault where the assets actually live. Now, XRP, the crypto-native liquidity bridge, Canton cannot be. While Canton secures the asset XRP moves value, the XRP ledger was designed with a specific friction point in global finance in mind, the dormant capital trapped in pre-funded Nostro-Vostro accounts. XRP acts as a neutral bridge asset, allowing a bank to swap fiat currencies in seconds without holding reserves in every target market. Next screenshot, it says, 2 layers, 1 ecosystem, why the replacement narrative is wrong. And this is exactly what I'm trying to convey to you guys. I think people that are retail participants debating whether XRP or Canton is going to be used on the internet, it's senseless. Shouldn't pay attention to it because none of those people really actually know, because they're not the people sitting in on the panel discussions, sitting in these closed door meetings that actually even freaking know what goes on. They're just retail on the internet with an opinion. This says, essentially, Canton Network functions as the digital notary. XRP functions as the armored transport. If Canton handles the atomic settlement of tokenized treasury bills within a permissioned U.S. network, XRP remains the most efficient tool for a foreign entity to source the USD liquidity needed to buy that bill. This mirrors the challenge discussed by Liquid Chain regarding cross-chain liquidity. Distinct ledgers need a neutral connector to function efficiently at scale. Without a bridge asset, liquidity remains fragmented across private chains. Inclusion. As with many debates in crypto, it's rarely ever a case of backing the stronger horse when both horses excel at totally different things. So that's the thesis that I personally stand by. I'm not here to say that this mention of Ripple Prime involves XRP or doesn't involve XRP. This is the stance that I take. I think anybody that is bullish on the assets that I just talked about, not financial advice, should be figuring out how to get those assets working for you. Instead of debating whether or not assets are going to be used in the future, they're all assets. And regardless if they perform well or not in the future, which we would all like, the bottom line is that they can pay you. HBAR can be deployed on loan protocol. XRP can be deployed on loan protocol and can now start to earn you yield on Soil or in the Flare ecosystem. XLM can be deployed on loan protocol, so on and so forth, and the list goes on, right? So, I think that debating on what assets now are going to be used or not is kind of senseless because nobody really freaking knows, right? The bottom line is you understand your personal risk. You're willing to take that risk and expose yourself to these markets and have a zoomed out perspective. And while you're waiting for that zoomed out perspective to come into fruition, you're earning yield, compounding your wealth, growing and using your assets to pay you in the now. So that way, when the market does appreciate in value substantially, you have more block space, more shares of these assets that will likely accumulate more value in the future. Then you're going to be one of the individuals who wins and not one of the individuals that debated all this senseless back and forth BS that goes on freaking Twitter. It's crazy. As for XRP is moving like freaking molasses. However, keeping you guys in the loop with these overall dark pools and deltas, we're still hovering right now in between the $1.43 and $1.34 dark pool. You can see that sellers push price straight down into $1.34. Buyers from where they previously bought from, turning $1.34 into support and pushing price higher into $1.50, have since defended, trapping sellers at these areas and trying to make an attempt to break above all the sell volume in this most recent downwards leg. So that means to the upside, our most immediate hurdle on XRP resides at $1.43. If we can see buyers break above $1.43, turn that into support, then that could open the door for a revisitation of 146. I'm not going to go outright and say, I'm going to go outright and say that it's not going to stop at $1.46. If we break above $1.43, we're likely to see $1.50 come back on the table. Above $1.50, we still have $1.62 that we need to see buyers break above before we get super excited. Anything above $1.62 opens the door for 177 and 198 to the upside as our next institutional hurdles that we need to see XRP price above before we get super excited. For some intraday trades, those will be some very good levels to be mindful of and paying attention to. To the downside, just like in the total cryptocurrency market cap, right now, I'd say that we are still bullish above $1.27 on XRP, where at any point in time, sellers do take over and sentiment shifts. We could still see buyers defend at any one of these lower levels where they previously bought from. So for now, on XRP, I'm still bullish above $1.34 to $1.27. Or we could possibly see a breakout, retest of $1.43, and a continuation move higher from where we currently stand. What would invalidate my bullish thesis on XRP is if we break $1.27 That would most likely result in a buy squeeze, taking all of the buyer stop losses from these lows here and here. And it would likely open the door for a nice move down into $1.18 to possibly $1.11. However, if we do see a move significant enough and a sentiment shift significant enough to break below $1.27, I have a firm belief that it's going to be a catalyst that's not going to stop at $1.11 to $1.18. Think about this logically, right? Look at price action right now and think about everything that has happened over the past, let's just say, what is it? What is this? February's price action. So February, March, April, now we're in May. So about 4 months, okay? And think about everything that has taken shape. We've had tariff debacles, inflationary woes, a freaking war, right? And a war announced in February, because what it was announced February 28th, wasn't it? Or something like that. Wasn't enough to break $1.27 on XRP. Okay, so you can see that here. We retested $1.27 on XRP. War scares again all throughout March and rolling into April. Still, again, we're not enough to break $1.27 on XRP, which is why I'm saying that as long as we are trading above $1.27 right now on XRP, the bullish thesis remains intact. If we break $1.27, war was not, substantiating enough to break $1.27. Inflationary scares were not enough to break $1.27. We've had Japanese yen interventions over the past consecutive couple of days, and that barely even moved the market, right? Think about the catalyst that would need to happen in order to break $1.27 and send crypto prices lower right now, right? So I'm just putting that on the table. Right now, we're not in that environment, but it would likely take something very shocking, some type of project going bust, exchange going sour, something catastrophic in the market to unfold, or some type of massive liquidation, scare tactic or something to take place to break where we've recently traded at around $1.27. And that's just me using logic. If a freaking war being announced between the US and Iran here in this environment wasn't enough to break $1.27, if we don't see anything worse than a war, then we're likely going to continue this uptrend or just consolidate in this range for now. All right. So be mindful of that. To the downside, 91 cents still remains my overall bearish target if we do break $1.27, where I will start to accumulate some XRP. But for now, like I said, not on the cards unless we see some formal catalyst that's worse than a freaking war that the market prices in to take us lower. Like, I don't know, maybe a rate hike or something like that. Like maybe inflation doesn't get contained and later on in the year we see the Fed actually needs to hike rates and tighten monetary policy. Maybe something, a catalyst like that. Who knows? All right. So just be on the lookout for that. Canton, boring, same price updates. We're hovering at around the 14,801. We've been consolidating in this range for freaking forever now. The one good thing I will say about this is just like XRP's price, Canton's PA has been relatively resilient. I know that so many people complain about Canton's price action for some godforsaken reason on the internet, on the retail side of things. But think about this. Canton has actually been a pretty good store of value during this down market, if you ask me, compared to other altcoins, where again, if we look at when the announcement of the war took place at the end of February, that was roughly here. Canton has held relatively firm in this whole entire area at around the 14,801 during the entire Trump era headline driven environment, and actually even experienced some significant gains. If you were to measure from this low up into the high, we actually saw a 29% rally on Canton in the middle of a freaking war crisis, right? So you can imagine that if during the middle of a crypto winter or temporary pullback, in the middle of a US-Iran war, in the middle of tariff retaliations and announcements and inflationary scares and all this bullcrap happening, Canton hovered at around 14,801 and stayed stagnant at this area during all this market uncertainty. Imagine what this price action looks like when market certainty returns, when we see a full-blown bull market and institutional adoption for the first time ever. I would go outright and say that we're probably going to see this asset perform extremely well. Okay, my personal opinion. Levels have not changed. 14,801 remains right now the current dark pool that we're trading at. To the downside, 12,275 and 09453 still remain intact for a possible buy scenario if we see those levels met. To the upside, before we get excited, we need to see buyers break above 18 0.194, turn it into support. That'll open the door for higher prices on Canton. Those levels come in anywhere between 22 to 29 cents as our next upside hurdles. Metal. Metal right now has respected the 10769 institutional dark pool almost to the frickin' pip. After we had crashed down into it at the beginning of February, we saw buyers defend it. Sellers tried to test the strength of those buyers. Buyers defended it again. And since then, we have traded up into the 15-cent range. The next dark pool to the upside comes in at the 18432, where before we get excited on metal's price action, you can see that we are still currently in a downtrend. Lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs. We are in a bit of an accumulation period. So we need to see buyers break above the 18432, turn it into support, and break above this previous high before we can start to get super excited on metals price action. If we can get this type of PA, then that'll put us in a new bullish range where we can start to look at these bases for continuation plays. And possible moves higher. Right? To the downside, just in case anything happens, if we break that 10769 area, 07950 is the next institutional dark pool to the downside, and underneath of that, the 04920. As for XPR, XPR held so freaking nice at the institutional delta between 002378 and the 001831. You can see that sellers pushed price down into the buy dark delta, Price consolidated. We saw a delta held pattern. The low taken. The high taken. Price came back to retest the base. Here was your 1. Here was your 2. Here was your 3. And then we had the significant bullish rally over the past consecutive couple of days, straight into the next dark pool to the upside at the 00284. Right now, price is trading above the sell dark pool at the 00284. To the upside, we have the 0035 next on our radar as a hurdle that we need to see buyers overcome before we get excited. And just like on metal, we're still trading in a bearish trend. Lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high. If we can see buyers break above the 0352 and overcome this bearish price action, then I will start to get super excited about possible higher prices on both metal and XPR.